Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to ask the question: what does it really require to start Dungeons and Dragons? And I think the answer is, I think the answer is more difficult than most people want to realize, and more things than most people want to admit, right? And certainly more than Hasbro wants to admit. Hasbro is jammed to the wall, like they are, like because they need people to jump in and play Dungeons and Dragons, but people are like, oh, that seems like a lot, man. And they're like, no, it's not. And I remember specifically, I remember this interview with Satine Phoenix and Kate Welch, and they were like, man, just jump in, it's easy, you could do it, it's just so straightforward. And you're like, no, none of that is true. Starting Dungeons and Dragons is a life-changing, hugely time involved, hugely investment involved. It's massively difficult, right? Like, and Hasbro don't want to believe that and the starter sets really help, right? And blah blah blah, right? But let's actually talk about, if you don't use a starter set, what does it actually take to and we will talk about this in context of the starter sets. But what does it take to actually start Dungeons and Dragons? So I recently got a much better view of this because I dealt with it on something that I don't normally deal with it on, right? So I'm an evangelical Christian, and one of the things that happens with anybody connected to church, if you were to stand up in my church, spin around and throw a foam rock, you're gonna hit somebody who plays guitar. What? Why do so many Christians play guitar? Because it's worship leader thing, right? People would just get like, I'm going to be the worship leader. It happened, like, I swear, like 3/4 of every person in every evangelical Christian church wants to be the worship leader. It's a thing, man, right? And so they all need to play guitar, and that's what you need to do to be a worship leader. So I ended up needing to buy, or not needing to. But there was this person who had been practicing and trying to learn guitar, and they didn't own a guitar. So they were borrowing everybody's guitar, right? Everybody, right? And I'm like, man, how much? And I actually said, my wife plays guitar, and I was like, how much does it cost to buy a guitar? It's like super expensive. It's like $300-$400, right? And she's like, no, I think you can get it much cheaper than that, right? So she searched, and she found that it cost $110 to get a decent guitar, like full size, good, functional, brand new guitar, $110. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, let's just pull the trigger on this and get this done for this person, right? This is ridiculous. Like, it's just because they're going through all this rigmarole to constantly borrow people's guitars. So then we go to the guitar store, and so I go to the guitar store to get this $110 thing, and I get there, and the guy's like, well, you can't just buy a guitar. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just gonna buy this guitar, give it. And they're like, you need, and so the salesperson's like, you need a strap, you need a tuner, you need a capo, right? And you need a bag. And I'm like, what? Like, and he's like, yeah, all that stuff. And that's not extras. You actually need that to do the thing, right? And I was like, and he's like, but hey, wait, don't worry about it. And then actually he showed me the starter set of guitars, right? And so I ended up buying I ended up buying a starter set that had the bag, the strap, the tuner, right? The guitar, and then the guy really wanted to sell me the cheese, like this protection program, and I was like, I ain't buying the cheese, right? Like, I ain't buying an insurance program for a 2-year insurance program for a guitar. And I was like, but you mentioned that capo thing, and he's like, yeah, that's not in there. But you know what? Buy the cheese, buy the $30 insurance 2-year plan, and I'll give you the capo for free. And the capo was $24, so I spent $230 to get this guitar, right? So, and then and actually, as I was going home, I was like, yeah, none of that is extra. All of that is absolutely needed. And so I think with Dungeons and Dragons, you need dice for every single person around the table. That's not going to come in a starter set, right? You need miniatures. And the reason why is when you begin, you can't be running theater of the mind, right? You need to know where everything is, right? You need terrain, you need pencils, you need paper, right? You need a lot of stuff, right? And you need a table and 6 chairs. It's a lot. It is a lot. I was stunned how much you actually need. And I could think about that because I was like, what do you actually need, right? So it is outrageously difficult to get started, and the $110 guitar I bought ended up being $230, right? But every part was needed. Like, so I just, and the only reason we're talking today is just buying this guitar, which I know nothing about, really taught me how, made me think, what do you actually need to start D&D? And it's not a small amount, right? Like, it truly is a life-changing event when you start Dungeons & Dragons, right? And for some people, it's not, because they never come back because they're overwhelmed, right? But I found this very, very fascinating. I am curious, are there things that you need that I didn't list? I'm curious. And then, and then is there any way to manage this better than the starter sets manage it? In my humble opinion, the starter sets are a help, but they don't really do everything that's needed. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.